Hi, everybody, and thank you for being here today. My name is Abby Cruz King, and I will be the moderator on the Myriad side. And I have with us Kadee Miller. She's the president of Continuum Advantage, and I will let her tell us more about her and what she does.
Thanks, Abby. I am Kadee Miller, and as she said, I'm the president of Continuum Advantage. But really what I am here to focus today on is the heartbeat of HR. While that's a little bit of a play on the Valentine's Day theme, it's also reality. So I'm going to talk a lot about intentional HR, which is a little different philosophy. And then also, your employees are what makes your business continue to operate. So while customers and clients and all that stuff is what you need, you also really need the core, which are your employees. So that heartbeat is what I'm referencing. So how do we make sure they're happy and that you're recovered, you're doing what you should be doing? And then what are the other things we should just know? Most people will say, I don't need HR, I'm good. Like, well, we could argue that we can do a lot of things on our own, but we're not necessarily really equipped. So today's topics are going to just review things that you need to be thinking about. I can guarantee something I'm going to say is going to hit a little bit of a nerve to say, maybe I should think about that. And that's the whole goal. So I am not legal advice, but I sure can tell you I know a lot about HR, and what I'm talking about today is really important for you to think about and know that there's resources, including myself and my team, that can help you fill the void of HR if it so exists. So first of all, I want to start out with, you might be a 1 to 5 person team, right? And so the answer I typically will hear is, I don't need HR. I only have 1 employee. I only have 3 employees. Well, you know what? 1 employee versus 3 versus 500 does not matter. If you have a employee, you need some components of HR. Now, I'm not saying that you are a 10,000 person employer and you need all the bells and whistles, but you do need to be compliant, which in your world, I know, financial advisors or really any industry you might be in, there's compliance, right? So with that, just remember, the more you have a plan, the more efficient and effective you're going to be, and your employees see that. So most of your employees, whether they have been with you forever, they're onboarding from somewhere else, or maybe they're new out of college, which would be awesome, right? Energy and revived energy. But that also means that they have some expectation. And that expectation may be from a corporate world where they've always known HR to be, and these are my words, maybe like, oh gosh, I have to go to HR, I don't want to talk about that. Or they have the idea of, there's so many things that this company offers because they're so big. And you're thinking, I'm not that big, how do I match that? Well, it's not a matching game. It's an appreciation and respect and value that you bring to your employees just as much as they bring to your company. So putting yourself in the shoes of, how do I make sure my staff feel appreciated, noticed, and acknowledged, comes in many different ways. So compensation, obviously, benefits, great, but then treating people like humans. So going back to the topic, the heartbeat of HR, which is human resources. So we can be human. We don't have to be shy. People get nervous. I don't want to talk to HR. Why not? We're really good people. Come talk to us. So here we go.
I know for a fact that Kadee has a dish of candy in her office, so people should always be excited to go see her.
I just upgraded to like a snack bar little thing. So you know what? I want people to come see me. So
I'll be right over.
Thanks. So with the HR components, there's the basics. Okay, so basics, and I mean basics, are an application, an offer letter. An offer letter that means something. So an offer letter cannot, well, an offer letter has to have certain components, and those components include the title, the compensation, whether it's hourly or salary, and the Fair Labor Standard Act, FLSA qualification. So If you don't have those, well, some people say, I don't have anything in writing. Why? Why would
Big mistake.
Would you ever go work somewhere that they didn't offer you something in writing?
Not a
I mean, if you
chance.
did, you probably had a really good handshake, and I respect and appreciate that, but not in today's world. People are going to ask for it in writing, and it really protects you, employer, and employee, because now we have, it's not a contract. Almost all states are at will employment. So the at will employment means that you don't have to employ them and they don't have to work for you. But having that in writing is important, that both employee and employer have notification and have signature that says, I know that I'm an employee at will. That doesn't mean we go firing people, and that's a whole different topic, but just know that there's a reason you have an offer letter. It does have to have good heart of it. The other thing is the application. Application is documentation of what the person is honestly telling you they have done, where they've worked, addresses, last names, etc. Financial services specifically have an extensive background check. It still doesn't replace the offer, and it doesn't replace the the application. The application, I really strongly encourage everybody to have that. First of all, anybody coming to you, you may or may not know them, but regardless, you want documentation of what their experience is. People will bring you a resume. Newsflash, a resume is a piece of paper with words on it. It does not mean it's accurate. It does not even mean it's theirs. I'm not saying people are not truthful, but don't be fooled. So if you
Are you telling me that people lie on their resumes? I don't believe it.
They may stretch the truth. It's really important that that application have written document of what they have actually done, because that has a signature. So if they say see resume, don't accept that, because see resume means it's a piece of paper that somebody else might have even done. So just make sure you're crossing those boxes off. So that's the application and the offer letters. The next thing that's really important is the I-9. I-9 is required by law. If you don't have I-9, so the I-9, flashback to what you may have done years ago in your career, or maybe you recently started and you just did it. An I-9 is the required document that shows you are legal to work in the United States. So the employee has to complete that document on day one or before. It has to be after the offer letter has been signed and before end of day one. Typically it's completed on day one. On the employer side, the employer has 3 business days from the date of hire to complete their portion of the I-9. So I don't want to get into the weeds, but the I-9 is a big deal, because if you have an audit and you don't have an I-9, there are significant fines. If you have an I-9 and it's not completed correctly, significant per square fines. So just know it's not something to not have, but I'm going to go into all that detail. It's really important. And then I'm going to say, when you complete them, they go into a file in your office. We don't submit them to anyone. They're just available should you get audited. If you get audited, you have to be able to show an I-9 for all employees. So just know it's not something to take lightly. The fines are real, they're expensive, and it's I have personally been through an I-9 audit for a much larger company, and it's not anywhere near fun. So definitely just have it ready and available, and it'll be easy. Another thing's job descriptions. So everyone has a title because it's required in the financial services industry to have such, but it does not, most broker-dealers do not have the job description that goes with the job title. So now I have a title, but my employee really doesn't know in writing what their job is. They just know because we've had conversation, right? And that's fine. A job description is not required by law. However, your chair as the owner of a company or management or whatever your role is, that an employee should know what their boundaries of their role is. A job description is not a ABC list. It is a overarching detail that says these are the core functions of your responsibility. It maybe includes things of one-off things or annual things. I mean, they can have a lot of variety, but generally speaking, the employee should say, I know what my job is. If we can't do that as an employer and an employee leaves, somehow there's a type of claim against the employer that, hey, I was doing my job, but they say I wasn't, and we have an issue, then the number one thing we could point back to from an employer standpoint is, here's your job description in which you signed, which you knew that was your job. If we don't have that, by no way, shape, or form am I saying there isn't ways to further communicate. It's just a really good starting point. Plus, I mentioned earlier, intentional HR. If I have a job description, I have intentionally planned on this position. I know what they're going to do. I know what the expectations are, but more importantly, I've communicated it to my staff. So strongly recommend job descriptions, and those, they're not there's tons online. So if you're going to Google, which in this case, I would say Googling a job description is not crazy, but it is something I would be very, take the time to read it, make sure it applies, because the last thing you want to do is have a job description that has stuff in there that doesn't even work for your company. So just make sure you do your due diligence if you're going to borrow something from the online options. A very common mistake, if you are from the days of manila folders and desk drawers, you will likely have experienced one file folder for every employee. That is not a good option. And you guys in the compliance world, you never want to have more available than what compliance needs to see, right? Like, you just want to give them what they need. So if I have a file, and it can be electronic, it can be paper, it doesn't matter the format, but my employee files, if I have everything in one bucket, and if I have a lawyer who says, hey, I need to see so-and-so's employee file for, a claim of some sort, I have to give them what that file has in it. But if I were to say, and what you really need to have are at least 3 files, an HR file, a payroll file, and a benefits file. That's at minimum. There are other buckets that may be needed as well, depending on what you're doing and how it's working. But just know, keeping them separate is really important. And it is your legal obligation to provide what's in a certain folder. And in today's electronic world, there are ways to see if people move, delete, or change things. So again, that would take a lot of extra work to validate, but just know, if you start out with it in the right places, you won't have to worry about it later. So let's see, I have pages of notes of things I want to talk about. I think the next topic for me is really, who is HR? So in a large company, there is a person, right? In a small company, there's maybe 2, 3, 5, whatever. And so the issue is never like the owner, the owner wears a lot of hats, and maybe there's one owner. And so you really are all hats, and that's fine. But then when we add staff, and maybe we have a couple people, and we assign someone the responsibility of HR functions, it's very common because it makes sense. Does an owner need to do everything? No. But is it right that your peer is now your HR as well? So I want to just put the concept out there that if you are looking to offload some responsibilities, evaluate the risk and the reward, because you trust the person you're giving it to, absolutely, or you wouldn't be doing it. But when they have that information, people are human. So again, human resources, if I'm a peer and I now have responsibility of processing payroll and working on benefits, I know things about my peers that I maybe don't want to know, but I now know, and I can't unknow what I know. So just think about what you're putting that responsibility is, not just the task you moved from your plate, but you put potentially an undue responsibility for them to be confidential, know things that they may not want to know. And generally speaking, it creates some type of friction within team members Maybe not day one, maybe not year one, maybe not year 5. But believe me, it happens, and I get that call of how do I undo this? Again, you can't unknow something. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at moving delegations of duties. Who's the best person? And maybe it's not somebody on your team. Maybe it's outsourcing. That's a silent plug for our team and how we help. But I do mean that sincerely. Like, maybe there's a cost to having it done with the right people, so internally there's not chaos. So confidentiality is really important there. How about the other things such as benefits? You know, HR in your world, in the corporate world, let me back up. The corporate world, there's all these teams, right? We've got benefits, we've got payroll, we've got HR, we've got the social committee, we've got it all. But now we are a 5-person team, 10-person team, whatever, and we don't. We have one person who's going to get all of that stuff. So, you know, how do we make it feel, look, and appreciate that our employees are here versus working in that corporate world or wherever they came from? Why should they work for us? What makes us stand apart? And that's on you. That's you, the business owner, to make that determination. How do I stand apart? So oftentimes, independent practices or small businesses have the ability to have flexibility. It's your call. You don't have to have the overarching corporate world of influence. It's your company. So that's huge, but promote it and mean it. Be intentional. Remind yourself of, I'm doing this for me, but how is my team going to benefit? It's a huge compliment to you, but also your team is working just as hard, and they need that recognition as well. Secondly, I think, you know, with the world of the benefits, let's just be honest. You're not going to compete with a 10,000 person team. You're not. But you can do really great things. And let's think about outside the box. I mean, I've got clients and just peers and people we work with just in the industry that are doing some really cool things. And it's because they took the time to think about it. They were intentional. You know, I've got a group that is doing a companion share. So if somebody goes on vacation, they pay X dollars toward their companion to go with them. We have reimbursement for parking. I know not everybody has a parking space, but man, it adds up when you do. Paying for bus passes, you know, honestly, it helps the economy or the environment, but it also helps the pocketbook if somebody's helping pay for that expense. We also have groups that are doing like additional volunteer days. It's a reward for time off, but it's a reward back to your community. So there's things that you can do that, yes, maybe cost money, but it keeps you in the ballpark of your larger company peers. But then we have to go back to benefits. Okay, so most employees work for money and they work for benefits. Maybe not in that order. Oftentimes benefits are almost more important than the pay. And it's because, you know, spouses or significant others or domestic partners, whomever they are, may not have options, or they're, you know, just need them for themselves. So be aware that if you're recruiting and you're not offering benefits, it will be harder to find great candidates because you may be weeding out the great candidates because of their personal need for benefits. So how do we resolve that? There are options. There's so many options. This whole seminar could be on it. But just know it's not, the only options are not, I have to go to the marketplace. The only option is not, I have to offer a group plan. There are things that we could do, health reimbursement account. You can do, you know, there's like a program we offer as an Advantage program, and it offers the ability to provide full scope of benefits to your entire team. There's like the small group plans. I mean, there are so many things. So expand your horizon, think outside the box, and honestly, don't put the budget in place until you at least hear what the options are. I know money, it's always the thing, is the money is the thing. I get it, guys. I do have a team here too, and people are expensive, but they also work hard. And with that, we have to be reciprocal of what they give us. We need to return the favor. And they can leave to go other places. Let's just not be naive about that. So with that, we have to put our best foot forward. These people trust in us to bring their best every day. So every day we need to give them our best, which is intentional. So benefits, they are available, and I would love to help you figure out what's out there. No matter what state you're in, we can help you, but also let's look at, I mean, there's options within each state that are a little bit different than other states. So there are things we could do to help. The other thing about benefits is not just medical, but there's dental, there's vision, there's ancillary benefits, you know, the short-term, long-term disability plans, life insurance. So no matter what your size, most of those plans would be available. The value or the amount is going to fluctuate. And you guys are in the industry of touching on this stuff a lot. You know this. But just know it doesn't mean you shouldn't offer it because it doesn't equal what they had somewhere else. It's still an option to provide something. You know, you don't want to be the one who has an unfortunate experience of somebody passing and the family calls and says, hey, was there any benefit? And your answer is, sorry, we didn't offer anything. Now, it's okay if that is your answer, but what a better way to say, well, yes, we sure do. We had a group life insurance and I'm sorry for your loss, kind of thing. So and those are inexpensive in the big picture, but so rewarding to your employees. So just remember, a little bit of value put out could bring a whole lot of value back from your employee. 401ks, retirement options, definitely is going to be a component that your employees are going to appreciate. I know with the new Act, the 2.0 deal, we've got seminars on all over the place. There's some new things coming out, and that's exciting. So how do we best embrace it? You know, I don't know all the rules yet, and I'll get up to date, but I know some of the things include, you know, matching a contribution if somebody's paying their college debt. You know, there's some things out there. Now, am I going to see that widespread? It's not required, but those are some things to, again, thinking outside the box. How do we bring in talent? So some things to think about. And then, you know, the other thing is the investment in your employees. I know I've kind of touched on doing something, but it doesn't have to just be financial. And so I'm going to go back to the intentional, but also human. You can be human as an owner and a manager and a boss. You don't have to walk on eggshells and not tell a joke or have a conversation or take them out to lunch or have coffee. Like, it is okay to be connected. I do support strongly that there's a barrier. It's, you know, maybe not every day, all day, where there's not the respect or the respect is lost for management, but it's okay and encouraged to make people aware that you understand who they are. You know them by name. That's fun. And that you also recognize they have family needs, they have personal needs. We don't need or want to be involved in everyone's life. I'm not saying that, but just remember back to the day that one person asked you how you were and you were like, wow, you knew my name. There was a day in your life, I know it happened. You've passed on and you're, you know, where you are today because you were treated with respect somewhere along the way that gave you encouragement to keep going. Be that person for your team. And I really encourage you to be human. I have a lot of clients will call and say, I don't even know how to talk to them. Well, you sure do. They're human, and you're going to talk to them with respect, but you're also going to hold whatever your ground needs to be because you're the owner or the boss or whomever. So, but it does need to come from respect. So just remember.
I think you can be a boss and still be friendly without being like best friends. It's a balance for sure.
Yep. And just making
I'd
sure.
rather work with someone who is like friendly toward me than somebody who doesn't know that I exist.
Absolutely. And that's the big difference, is being interactive without over crossing any lines there.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, Abby, do you have any questions that have come in at all?
I have actually been getting a lot of questions about the background checks. Can you tell people more about the process of a background check in the financial advising industry?
Yeah, so registered or not, anybody coming to your company is going to have to go through a background check. They may be a fingerprint only, they're not registered, or the whole background check if they are registered. I will tell you that the process, no matter where you're clearing through, is a little bit timely. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks on a good time. So get that started. If you've got a candidate that you're really thinking this is going to be the right hire, talk about, moving forward, but then let them know, hey, a part of my onboarding is the background check and I'd like to get that started. You can't hire them if they fail the background check, and it's okay to say that. You also have to know that, well, if they've been in the industry, they know that. If something comes back and you're not okay with it, then you also don't have to hire them. So you're not saying I'm hiring you, you're saying pending confirmation of a clean background check, we can further have conversation about employment. So twofold there. So it is it's a time process, but one that everyone has to go through.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize it took that long. That is quite extensive. How long is it for other industries by comparison?
Generally, the issue or the reason it's the background check is because they're checking licenses, the U4, the U5, they have to do fingerprints, and it's sometimes some broker-dealers do credit checks. So it's the volume of things that they go through. And then if there is any type of mark on their U5, then that obviously goes into further review. So.
Oh my. Oh. Thankfully, I passed my background check, so I don't have to worry about that. I had a question about job descriptions. They said, does Myriad/Continuum write job descriptions?
We do draft job descriptions. As I mentioned, a job description is specific to each client or each location, each position. So we have templated but vetted by peers job descriptions. But my word of advice is we are happy to share such, but it doesn't mean it fits to a T. You'd have to read it, modify it, revise it. But I would definitely guarantee it's better than a Google search. It's also better than a blank piece of paper and starting from scratch.
Definitely. A template can really help. And then does Continuum look over the templates after they've put in all their information? Can you guys review those?
Yep.
Cool.
Happy to.
Okay. I had one more question. Do you need to have an employee handbook if you only have 1 or 2 employees?
That is a great question. So I probably hear this once a week with no exaggeration of, I don't need a handbook, I'm good. Okay, so, and most of the time that it's thought that I don't need a handbook because then I, manager, owner, whomever, have to follow the rules. Where if I don't have a handbook, it's not in writing, and then I don't have to follow the rules. It doesn't really work that way. So I would argue that a handbook in your environment, small environment, 20 or less people, whatever it is, that you actually benefit more by creating the handbook, going through the exercise of what you don't know, so that when you have a question that comes up, you know the answer. The last thing you really want is an employee saying, hey, I've got jury duty tomorrow, we pay for that? And you've never thought of it. It's just not a place you want to be because you're the owner. You should know the answer.
Oh.
So there are things within the creation of a personalized handbook that will challenge your mind, your thought process. What do I want that to look like? What is my dress code? What is my vacation policy? How do I want people to call in sick? Do I want them to text me? The answer is no. Do I want them to call me? Those types of things. So it's intentional HR. If I put together a handbook, then I know what's in it. And so these questions, which almost always are answered within the scope of a handbook, can be addressed. That's not to say there won't be a one-off and you might have to think about it, but that's the other coaching moment here is just because an employee asks does not mean you have to answer on the spot. So while it may feel as though they are saying, hey, I need to know if I'm going to get paid for jury duty tomorrow, you can say, thank you for asking, and I'll get back with you tomorrow afternoon at 5 or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
you have the ability to say, I appreciate the ask, let me get back with you. It doesn't even mean that you don't know. You may need to reference what your notes were and how you were going to do something. So just keep that in mind. But the answer to your question that you started out with is, do I need a handbook? Some states do require handbooks based on the number of employees, not all. So I can't answer it as a broad question, but the answer is if I have one employee, I likely should have a handbook. And if at minimum, I've gone through the exercise of creating a handbook so that I at least know how I want to run or operate the business. It just gives you a leg up. The number one reason, in my opinion, that handbooks are really important for small businesses is most small businesses are something comes filed up about harassment in the workplace. And if I don't have a handbook where my employee knows what to do if they're feeling harassed, how do they report it? If I don't tell them, they're probably not going to come to the owners to say, hey, how do I file a harassment claim? Instead, they're going to come and say, this is what happened, and they're going to give an example. Because they don't know who to go to, they're going to call their lawyer. So the better option would be to have a handbook that gives instruction, generality, and specifics on how to work. The harassment thing on that topic is, what do I need to do? What's my timeline? What's my employer's timeline to respond, etc. So there's reason, especially on that particular item, that it would be very helpful for each employee to know, what do I do if I'm feeling that I want to do something? How do I do it without probably awkwardly having to ask like the owner or something?
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming Continuum does handbooks as well?
We do create personalized handbooks. There is a cost for that, but it's actually pretty extensive. We go through the whole handbook. We make sure you understand the cause and effect of decisions, because sometimes it sounds great, and then when we put it in writing, it's like, oh, that also means XYZ. So we work a lot with you. We also create several documents and forms that coordinate with the handbook, and it kind of gives you a really great presentation for your employees as they join or are part of your team.
Awesome. And then once you've made a handbook, do you need to update it?
Yep, it should be reviewed annually for your purpose of things that you decide, like vacation, sick time, holidays, those types of things. And then if we create your handbook, we review it from the state and federal updates. Over the past few years, there have been many adjustments, but every state does it differently. So the biggest thing, most employers, because if you don't live in this world of handbooks and the state rules on different things, I don't know why you would know unless you're awesome at research and knowing these things, which is great. But there's required leaves. So example, there are certain states that you have to allow your employee to leave to go to school to help their child if they're in disciplinary action, even if they don't have any more time off. But if you don't know that, you may say, hey, you're out of time, I'm not able to let you go. So it just keeps you compliant with the rules and not putting you in a bad spot when the employee might be like, that's a law. So.
And how would you know otherwise? I would never have looked that up myself.
And these are the things that are in some handbooks. You're like, I probably wouldn't have known that. So, but that is why, again, that's why I go back to, I think it's almost equally as good for the employer to create it, learn what you don't know, you don't know.
If you had to give our audience like one piece of advice for intentional HR, what would it be?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing I would say is you're not going to know all the answers, and there's no 100% right or wrong. There's rules and whatever. I think the best thing I can say is being a good manager, boss, owner, whatever your title, will make your life in the HR arena so much easier. So I know some people have a title, and that title is important, but so is any other title in your company. So I just think that's probably my word of advice to new owners is they've never been an owner before. I don't really know this role, and I've always had an HR team and a benefits team and a payroll team, and now I'm wearing all these hats. Well, you're not a one-man show. You can actually differentiate and, you know, hire help or get help. You don't have to be alone. It's okay and encouraged to ask questions. I know everything about financial advising, which is why I ask questions.
Exactly.
You are not an expert in HR, maybe. If you're not, then ask people who are. Get resources and dependable ones. You know, people. You know, my approach at Continuum is we serve as an extension of your team. It's your show. It's your company. How do we make what you want to do happen? And as long as you have that partnership, and it works great. But, you know, it's your show. Just make sure you're doing it really well.
Yeah. I mean, we all know that entrepreneurs wear like a lot of hats, and so does any boss of any company, but doesn't mean you have to wear all of the hats all the time. You can probably take a couple off and give them to Continuum. They can even still have your logo on it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I actually learned a lot about HR that I never would have known otherwise. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody who showed up to the webinar today. So let's say thanks to Kadee, and then we'll log off.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to hear from you.
Bye, Kadee.
Bye.